Welcome. Give me just a minute. I am going to make sure we are going, see if anyone hops in. And I'm also going to get this reshared because technology, welcome, Better Humans at Work. Another beautiful day. All right. So there we go. Now that we got that going, welcome to another episode of Better Humans at Work with me, Sertrice, Grice, co-owner and chief consulting officer here at Mattingly Solutions. But I am really, really, really excited for the guest we have with us today, and so happy I was introduced to her because our conversations have been so fun so far. The wonderful Julia Rock. Julia is a career and leadership development coach who has helped hundreds of ambitious Black and POC professionals break through career plateaus to secure six-figure salaries and fulfilling job opportunities. She is also a certified professional resume writer and a certified employment interview professional. Through her company, Rock Career Development, she now helps Black and POC former and transitioning athletes translate their existing skills into high-paying, in-demand careers. Through her signature coaching methods, clients are able to secure dream positions while earning their worth and then some. Julia has been featured in several major publications and platforms, including Fortune, Business Insider, Monster, and Blavity. Julia is also a published author, co-authoring two new books, The Six-Figure Athlete and Athlete to Entrepreneur, which is available in July. So again, super excited to have you here. Another strong Black woman, author, business owner, what up? And for our topic today, where we're going to take a different angle for our audience and focus a bit more on athletes in the workplace, which I feel like is often overlooked. So welcome, Julia.
Thank you so much. It's always fun, listening to your bio. Just it's me, But thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about today's conversation.
Yes, definitely. I had a similar thing. I'm in Columbus right now for a couple sessions, and I did the same thing earlier when I was introduced for my keynote. I was like, ooh, why did I send them so many words? Please stop.
Right. It's just this is lengthy. Oh, God.
Oh, definitely. So, Julia, I know I spent some time talking about you, but tell everyone a little bit more about, kind of how you got into this specific angle of focusing on athletes and what that's been like.
So I've always been committed to helping Black and Brown people to level up in their careers. I started out kind of unofficially in 2006 and more officially in 2013 when I was recruiting for my day job, and I saw the stark difference in performance with Black candidates versus non-Black candidates in terms of how they were presenting themselves. And it's not that their resumes were thin or anything. It was just the way that they were presenting themselves. And it's like, there's something missing here. So how can I come in and help level the playing field? And so that's just something I've always been committed to. And so, and then when I got into the space, there weren't that many career coaches that looked like me back then. I mean, fast forward now to today, there's so many, and I'm excited to see that. But it's back in 2021 when I was helping another client with her career journey. She was looking to transition. Her brother was also coming back from playing sports overseas and needed some support on his journey in terms of finding that next opportunity. And so we kind of discussed, hey, Julia, do you think you may be able to step in and provide some assistance here? And I don't have an athletic background. I'm not going to sell that. God was like, sis, this is not your ministry. Go read a book, go do some math or something, because you have no athletic skills. But I decided to hop in anyway, and he and I worked together, and it was such an amazing experience because it was someone who never really had been in the professional working space. And so there was a lot that we could share together. But then after he got a job, it was just like, well, wait a minute. If he needed this help, what about all the other athletes out there who are making this same transition? Who's helping them? And I found that there are athletes who are helping, but these are athletes who have found their own way. But I thought about it coming from another way of saying, I'm someone who's been a hiring professional. I've been a career coach for eons at this point. What if I took those same skills I was using in the private sector or for professionals and then helping athletes? So that's really how we got to today.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. And I feel like oftentimes when we think of athletes, we think of them as kind of like these celebrities, right? Oh, it's an athlete, you do your sport and that's your thing. And we forget that that's not going to last forever, right?
Right.
You're not going to have a 60-year-old out there on the field. So what are they doing, right? Because you still need some kind of income. And yeah, sure, you might have something saved over, but probably not enough to last you the rest of your life. So what
Exactly.
I feel like we miss that. And so kind of what do you see when you're working with these athletes and they're trying to make that transition? Is it tough for them or for organizations?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough on the athlete for sure, because especially when you've come from playing your sport and being a top performer, right? And you kind of knew what path you were on, you knew what your days would look like. There was a lot that was already known for you. And then when you come to the point of transition, it's like, oh snap, like what happens now? Like, where do I go now? Who am I now? Like, that's the big question, right? Like, if you're no longer an athlete, the question is, who am I now, and what value do I add? What's my purpose now? So there's that kind of transition that they have to go through, which is very difficult for many athletes. And then for organizations, there are some organizations out there that truly embrace bringing in athletes, and we love those groups, right? But there's some other organizations who may look at resumes that athletes have and say, okay, well, they may not have all the experience, which I think is interesting, because I'm a firm believer you can teach somebody anything. You can give them a book or a course, but the skills that athletes bring to the table aren't things that people can just be taught in a book or a course, whether it's the competitiveness, the teamwork, the leadership. Those are things that are innate within athletes that for many professionals who have gone to the schools and had all the jobs, they still may not have those skills years into their careers. And so it's trying to change that conversation so that some of these organizations better understand the value athletes bring.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call out. It's why, in my space with industrial organizational psychology, we're always reminding people we fall into this place of wanting particular college degrees and making college requirements for roles. And it's like, hold on, what is it that you actually want? If it's let's break it down to the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other things that you're looking for, because there are other ways for us to gain that knowledge. And so someone can really have a lot going for them. But if we put those barriers in place for certain things, not saying athletes don't have degrees, because I know they have that too, but even if it's a different degree than what you think you're looking for, right? Or the different experience, they say, you need X amount of years experience in a certain role. And it's like, well, but what are you really looking for? So I
That's
love
the
that
thing.
reminder.
It's like, what are you really looking for?
Yeah.
Let's get off the wish list. Like, what do you actually need to do this job and do it effectively? And let's start with that.
Yes.
Right. But
Yeah. Because you
but
being
that's
in a role for so many years doesn't even mean that you have that skill that you're actually looking for.
that's the other thing that I feel like is a different conversation that we need to have, because somebody's been doing that job 10 years and still can't tell you what the spreadsheet does. Okay. But that's a whole other discussion.
Oh, definitely. But so do you, you've been doing this now for a while. Is there, and I know you mentioned the skills that they have you found that there's a certain industry or type of role that athletes gravitate towards, or, that feels like a good fit for the types of skills that you tend to see?
Yeah, for sure. Sales is definitely a big one. I find that for athletes and those military professionals, that's a field that they are able to kind of hop in, because when it comes to sales, you need certain abilities, but you don't need a ton of pre-experience. And athletes are just naturally competitive. They're natural go-getters. And so if they're given a task in front of them, or if they're given a quota, that's something they can just eat right up, right, with the right training. Real estate is another one that I actually did an interview with a pro snowboarder, a former pro snowboarder a while ago, and real estate has been where he's been able to do very well. Many also choose to stay in the sports space, whether it's coaching or player development. because there's some people who feel like, okay, even if I can't play, I want to help build the next generation of athletes and give back in that way. And then I've also seen marketing as well. Marketing has been. I'm actually working with a client now who's being promoted in her marketing role, and so there are a couple of different spaces, but I would say for sure sales, marketing, real estate, and then like I said, many of them choose to stay in the sports space and do some coaching or player development.
Yeah, I love hearing that because I think that's the other side is we either think we just think of them in that athlete space, like I mentioned, or we think they'll be in something very closely related to the coaching side, which is true. And some people will stay in industry in some way with their sport, and that's fine. But there are other things outside of that. So real estate's a really fun one. Sales and marketing, I'm like, yeah. And then real estate, I was like, wow, that's really intriguing. And so thanks for kind of sharing a little bit about what you're experiencing there. Another thing that I've been really curious about and hearing from you is I know you spend a lot of time helping these athletes on that one-on-one individual level, but it's important that the environments are ready for them too, right? So if you were able to sit there, hopefully they're listening, right, and talk to these organizations about what they can be doing to either improve their selection process to be getting these people in the door, or the environment once they're there, that it's welcoming and accommodating. What are some tips you would give organizations in their role to play with athletes transitioning to them?
Well, let's crack the knuckles here. No, so I mean, there's so much that organizations can do. I mean, the first one is primarily just being an organization that is advertising and vocalizing the fact that you want athletes on your staff and the why behind. I think, sometimes athletes ask the question, oh, do companies even want to hire? And then we have that discussion and we find organizations that are athlete or sports friendly. But that's the first thing a company can say, hey, we're looking for athletes. You fit what we're looking for. You fit our culture, and being vocal about that. Another thing that would be really important is identifying the opportunities for these athletes that would leverage their skills, leverage their transferable skills that they're already bringing to the table, right? Because athletes may feel like, oh, I don't have all of the functional experience or the technical experience, but being able to share opportunities that would leverage their skills and give them the space to, be competitive, give them the space to collaborate. So using those skills they already have. But on top of that, designing career paths for them. I want to make sure that the athletes don't just get a job, right? We don't just want you to have a job and then you don't know where you go. So organizations need to be intentional about the career path that they're designing, for these individuals. What's the long-term growth and progression? One other key thing, I mean, I've got a list of things, but one other key thing I want to also mention is around the onboarding and the kind of the first 90 days. That time period is extremely critical for athletes because this is really their first kind of taste into the work, right? So, I mean, maybe, 6 months to a year down the road, they're into that groove. But if this is their first foray into the professional space, you want to make sure that you have a thoughtful onboarding process and then the 90-day plans. What is it that they're going to be measured against? What are the goals that you're setting for them? What is your role as an organization and the management, helping them to kind of get acclimated in that space as well. And then besides the onboarding, what does the training program look like for them? So after, they have the 90 days, but how do they continue to get upskilled, right? How do they continue to expand their tool belts? What happens there? And then also feedback is so important because when you think about an athlete, right? They have a coach, they have trainers, they have people that they're working with, and so they're watching game film. They have other things that are helping them to understand where can I improve, what can I do better. But if you're in an organization now that's just radio silent, you're going to work every day. It's like, am I doing a good job or no? I don't know, right? And so the question is how can these organizations create a structured feedback loop for them that's frequent and ongoing, so that because athletes are very coachable individuals, but they got to know what's going on, right? So if you're not hearing anything, it's like, I don't know what to work on. And then the last thing I'll say here is around creating networking and mentorship opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's different for professionals that are coming from one organization or another. You know, professionals who may know what it's like to navigate in that space and know how to network, but for athletes being in this professional space, they're going to need a little bit more help of understanding how to navigate your organization. And also, do you have former athletes that are already in senior levels of management that you could connect them with, so they could start to build some relationships and understand that things do improve, that they do learn the skills, that there's a career path for them? Because think about being a person of color, right? When you get into an organization and everybody from the top to the bottom is white, you're just like, well, is there a career for me, or should I be looking someplace else? And you know, no tea or shade to those organizations, but it's hard to see yourself with a career path if no one looks like you. So similarly for athletes, if these organizations have athletes who are in senior positions, leadership positions, driving decisions, it then gives them the boost to say, okay, this is something I can do too. I can be successful in my next career chapter. I could go on and on, but those are some of the highlights.
No, you're good, and those are amazing. I've been dropping notes in the chat too to highlight some of the key things you just said. I'm also going to go back and say, I mean, yes, shade to those organizations, because something's not right, and you need to think about that. What environment, like what message are you putting out there when you don't have diversity at the top? And it may be intentional, it may be unintentional, but either way, that message is out there. So something needs to be done. If it's not intentional, something needs to be done. So I just want to say, I'm going to throw that shade out there. I'm going to
sprinkle a little shade there.
Sprinkle that out there. But no, something else that stood out to me when you were talking, and other people may be listening and thinking, and I think is a really good call, is so much of this is just good practice. And it's a reminder to us that the things we might think of them as, oh, they're different, they're special. And there are parts that are special, yes. But this is also just good practice. We should be having these opportunities to upskill. We need to be better at providing feedback to our employees. We need to, let me scroll back up in my notes, right? We need to have these career paths. We need to be intentional. And so thinking of these things, that's something that organizations in general need to have a better impact. And it's going to help everyone be able to succeed more. And but then also knowing, you know, your particular audience too, thinking if someone comes in, what they might need that looks a little different. That's the importance of building those relationships and getting to know people's needs. So
absolutely. And one thing I'll say is, you know, for professionals, if you're coming into a new organization, you may have a thought of like, maybe I can reach out to my, you know, the personal board of directors or trusted confidants and that kind of thing. But for athletes who have never even been in that space, and the people you are talking to may still be playing or whatever the case is, you're like, I don't even know what to do. And so that's why it's like, you know, you want to make sure that if the organizations are truly committed to bringing in athletes, that they're creating this kind of environment that welcomes them and lets them know, you know, that they've got the support as they go through. I tie it back to people of color all the time as well, just being in the professional spaces, because when we get into these organizations and there's no structure to help us navigate, we find ourselves exiting organizations. You know, we find that our performance does not go as well. We may not ascend to the right levels because we don't have any of that support that we see other employees getting. And so it's a very similar kind of parallel with athletes. It's like, are they getting the right level of support, knowing that they have different needs?
Yeah, definitely. And it gets us into the equity space is what it's about, right? And that's why something a little different might be needed, because all of those other people, and in this case, right, we're talking about athletes versus professionals. And yes, we may also get into the race space, but there are so diversity covers a lot of characteristics, right? And there are a lot of forms of diversity, and being an athlete versus a non-athlete is one, and there's something that they may need to be able to get to that next level, or else they're going to feel, I don't belong here. This wasn't the right thing for me as my next step. And then they're gone. Right. And so we're automatically like, we're having that attrition, But it's, again, you may not say like, we don't want athletes, but if they don't have the systems, policies, practices in place to get them to that next level, then you're still having that same issue.
And I think that that's how sometimes organizations feel like maybe they're absolved of responsibility. Well, we didn't say that we didn't want anybody here. Well, yeah, maybe you didn't say it and point the finger, but are you creating an environment that's conducive to a certain organization or a certain group of people thriving, right? Because if you're not creating that environment, it's a de facto way of saying that, well, you can either sink or swim, but we're not going to invest any additional effort. So everything doesn't have to be overt, right? And I think that that's how people try to circumvent. And it's like, no, policies, procedures, practices, or lack thereof can be saying it, saying it even louder than you pointing a finger. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Definitely. Well, and that's actually a really good transition to our last question here to get ready to wrap us up. And that is, what would, it's our go-to question. What do organizations need to do to help create better humans at work?
Well, this is another one that I'm going to sink my teeth into. The first thing would be to realize that their employees are human. I think sometimes they're treated as machines, right? That they need to crank out deliverables, and that's that. But the truth is, they need balance, they need flexibility, they need the opportunity to work in a way that allows them to live a productive life, not just for them to crank out the widgets, but also for them to be there for the families that rely on them. And realizing that employees are not children. They don't just have to accept what you give them, right? Like here's your one cracker and your one box juice and go make it happen. The idea is that they should be able to select careers. They should be able to select their schedules in a way that continues to support the business, right? People still have to make money, but making sure that we're not just trying to give one size fits all. We should also be thinking about creating better leaders. If you want better humans, if you want better employees at work, you have to have better leaders. So many of these organizations have too many managers, but not enough leaders. People who have the ability to inspire their teams, people who can show vulnerability, people who can have the courage to advocate for their employees, even when it's not popular with the company line, right? People who are willing to listen. And so, where are the leaders and not just managers? And the last thing I'll say is around, being willing to fix what's broken. If morale is low, if productivity is low, ask and understand, seek to understand what the drivers are. A Band-Aid of a pizza party or an ice cream social, that's not a retention strategy, right? That's not going to improve employee engagement. I wish people would stop doing it. It's not cutting it, right? And so what are the real reasons people are leaving? If they're not feeling valued or if they don't understand, how their role fits into the bigger picture, then fix what's broken, create those communication channels or change the policies where needed. And if you don't feel like you understand why people are leaving, look at your exit surveys. Are they asking the right questions? Are they robust? Is there a way to require more people to take it? So, because it's not easy to say, well, no one's filling out the exit survey, so we don't know why. Well, tie it to the exit process, making sure that when they hand in their laptop and so forth, before you hand in your laptop, you've got to do this thing. It's not rocket science. Come on. And so I think it's the willingness to listen and then being willing to fix what's broken and not just try to put a Band-Aid over it. So I'll get off my soapbox, but
No.
but those are some of the ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it so much. I love it. Such amazing points. Some of these are things I think on a daily. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today, Julia. It's always amazing chatting with you. Before we wrap up, can you also share if anyone wants to reach out and connect with you, the best way for them to get in touch?
Absolutely. So they can actually go right to our website at rockcareer.com. So if you want to work with me or book for speaking or anything, they can go right through the website. And then if they want to connect with me on social, I'm at the Julia Rock on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then the business is at Rock Career on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So very consistent. So at the Julia Rock and at Rock Career.
At Rock Career. Amazing. Easy peasy. Well, thanks again, Julia, for being here with us today. Amazing to have you. And thank you all for watching either live or in a replay. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Sertrice.